is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly.
Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to the 91st meeting of the Economy Committee. Some members will be attending this morning's meeting via Starleaf and our witnesses will be briefing via Starleaf. The meeting will be broadcast live when open to the public and a recording will be made available on the committee's web pages on the Assembly website. Just to remind members that any bill briefings will be Hansarded as per protocol and to ask members to mute their tablet devices when they're not speaking. So moving on to item number 1, which is apologies. We don't have any apologies.
No, Chair, we're expecting some members to be late, and I think Mr Dixon won't be joining us, so he will be apologies.
That's apologies from Stuart, thanks. Item number 2 then is our draft minutes, and there's a copy of the draft minutes from the meeting held on the 16th of February at page 5. Are members content that those are an accurate reflection of the meeting?
Thank you.
And then there is a copy of the draft record of decisions from the meeting on the 16th of February at page 10 of our pack. Are members content that those are an accurate reflection?
Thank you.
Okay, and just to remind members that this morning we will be suspending the committee between 10:30 and 11:30 to allow members to go to the chamber for the minister's statement. So are members content that we will suspend the meeting at that point?
Thank you.
Yes.
And then also, because we have to suspend the sitting, we have deferred the city deals briefing to prioritise the 0 hours bill briefing. So are members content with that change to the agenda?
And thank you.
Okay, so moving on then to item number 3, which is Chair's business. And obviously we were all very shocked and saddened to hear of the death of Christopher Stalford on Sunday. Christopher was a former member of this committee and a very valued member of the committee. So I just wanted to again offer my personal condolences to his family and to his colleagues, and also to put on record the committee's condolences to Christopher's wife Laura, to their 4 children, to his mommy and his brother and sister and wider family. And obviously his friends and all of his colleagues on the committee and in the Assembly as well. So if anybody else wants to say anything at this point, that's...
Just to add to Ian, those comments.
Thank you. So moving on then, at page 3 of our table papers, there's a letter from the Speaker regarding our legislative pressures. We have previously discussed in committee the onshore fracking prohibition bill and the employment 0 hours and banded weekly hours bill will not proceed to consideration stage. The same applies to the trade unions and labour relations amendment bill, which is scheduled to have its second stage debate on the 2nd of March. So that letter is for members to note, and last week I had said I would speak to the bill sponsors. So obviously we're a little bit further on with Gemma's bill in relation to our consideration of it, so that will proceed, and obviously we will report on that. But Gemma has obviously taken on board what the Speaker has said, and won't be seeking to table beyond this stage. Anya is in a similar position. Obviously we're a little bit further behind, so Anya has indicated that she won't be moving beyond obviously this stage, and doesn't expect the committee to engage in extensive consideration given the fact that it won't go beyond this stage, and obviously she has indicated that she will be keen to look at it again in the next mandate, and obviously we had heard from the Minister around his preference for a ban on petroleum licensing, so we'll be waiting to see how that progresses as well. So Anya, as it says, isn't expecting the committee to engage extensively around this bill.
Chair, we have, she's agreed to come and talk to us, and we also have the IS and the department, so that's effectively what we're looking at in terms of evidence we gather and publish. And as we discussed before, there'll be a short bill report just reflecting the bill, reflecting that evidence, but indicating the committee's reserving its position and the reasons why the committee needs to do that and why it hasn't gone out for a survey and call for evidence for fracking.
Okay. So what are we doing now, Peter?
So if we move to matters arising, Chair, we'll go through as much of that as we can at item 6.
Okay, so items 6.1, 6.4 and 6.5 we are going to take together because they all refer to the review of Invest NI. There is a letter from Sir Michael Lyons at page 484 of our packs on the independent review. An informal meeting has been arranged with Sir Michael on the 10th of March at 1:30 p.m. All members should have already received the link to that meeting. Then there is the ministerial statement on the independent review of Invest NI at page 16 of table papers, and that's for members to note. Correspondence then from the Minister at page 20 of table papers regarding the 2 additional panel members who have been appointed to the panel for the review of Invest NI, and those are Dame Rotha Johnson and Maureen O'Reilly. So that is also for members to note. Go ahead, Peter.
No, just Chair, just on the mechanics mentioned about the informal meeting being on the 10th of March, and is that?
Oh, is it the 8th of March actually?
8th? What?
Hang on, it's a Thursday. Let me just
That'll be the 10th, I think. But is that just going to be here? Is it, or do we know the location?
that will be virtual.
Oh, right. Okay.
So we've sent a meeting link, and we've already had acceptances for that, and we tried for 1:30 because we're hoping that doesn't clash with Thursday meetings that members attend, because I know members meet on a Thursday morning in some cases, but it may clash otherwise.
I'll not, the 3rd of March?
No,
The
10th.
10th
10th.
of March. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, 10th of Thursday. But again, Sir Michael has indicated in previous correspondence, and there are contacts, that he is now interested in talking to parties, but also individual MLAs can approach George Cadogan in his office, who'll organise whatever meeting. We had to do a bit of back and forth to get a spot in his diary, but I imagine members can be flexible. Other than that meeting, I'm sure he'll make himself available. He's very keen to engage. So we'll continue to support that if any members want us to go to his office and look for meetings or whatever. But I know he's very keen to now engage with parties directly as well.
Okay, so moving on then, 6.2, there is a response from the Equality Commission regarding the High Street voucher scheme. At page 485 of our packs, the Commission requested the Section 75 screening for this policy and responded in September 2021. In summary, the Commission reminded the Department of the importance of timely equality assessments and queried the potential for the screening to inform the development of the delivery of the High Street voucher scheme. We noted that it was unclear, given the lack of data in the equality assessment, how the assessments of impacts were determined. The Commission is also engaging with the Department to process written complaints received by the Commission and made under paragraph 10 of Schedule 9 of the 1998 Act. The Commission has received a number of complaints to date, asking it to investigate allegations that the Department failed to comply with specific commitments contained in its equality scheme in relation to the High Street voucher scheme. And obviously these are issues that we have previously discussed. So it's for members to note for now. 6.3, then there is a response from the Minister regarding the summary of responses to the consultation on heat networks, building a market framework at page 487. The Department received 20 responses to the consultation from energy representatives, housing providers and consumer representative bodies. Given the support for the Minister's approach, he intends to provide BES with NI-specific legislative instructions that will provide for the extension of the heat network market framework provisions in the planned Westminster Energy Bill to the north. A legislative consent motion will then be required for the bill once it is introduced in May 2022. So that is for members to note. Then there is correspondence from the Minister regarding the commencement of the initial stage of the review of further education delivery model at page 21 of table papers. This is the first phase of the review, which will largely focus on gathering information on the current landscape within the sector, engaging with key stakeholders and identifying high-level options for any new or revised delivery model. An external contractor, Tribal, has now been awarded the contract to carry out this initial work, and the evidence collected will be critical in determining the next steps. This initial exercise is expected to be completed and a report provided by mid-2022, which will then inform further decision making. At this point, an update will be provided to the committee.
Chair, it might be useful to go back to the department to see how they're coordinating that with the overall review of education. The committee's talked a number of times about how what's provided by DFE, what's provided by DE need to dovetail a lot better. So logic would suggest that the review of FE should also be aligned with any review of it more widely of education.
And the 14 to 19?
14 to 19 strategy, yeah.
Jeremy, I know in terms of the situation as regards the review of education on it, because very specifically whenever terms of reference were brought to the executive for that, it did encompass then to try to make sure that it was in a reasonably holistic way, that it did encompass the further education as well within that, and to try to make sure that all aspects of it were covered. So I think it'd be useful to get that sort of indication of where the lie of the land is.
Is there any time within our busy schedule between now and dissolution to take a look at this in more detail?
We will find that space and we will do that. I'm always afraid to say we may have a couple of openings of things we expected that aren't happening, but we will make time for that.
So build it and they will come.
Amount to that.
Okay. Then at 6.7, there's a response from the department regarding the SL1, the domestic abuse information sharing with schools, and whether or not FE colleges are included in the pilot, and that's at page 27 of table papers. FE colleges and non-statutory providers were not involved in the pilot of the Operation Encompass model that was launched last September, and this is because Operation Encompass model was originally envisaged to include primary and secondary schools only. So that's for members to note, unless there's any further. Go on ahead, John.
Sure. It's a bit of a cryptic answer. I'm trying to work it out. Are we to read from that since the legislation is passed and it's included further higher education, that they are now included in the rollout?
And I think we do need to get a better understanding of this in more detail. What I was going to suggest was there may potentially then be required to be an additional pilot that would involve FE. So I think to clarify what exactly is happening, and as you say, it doesn't really make it clear. They are meant to be, FE is meant to be included in the rollout, but will there be no pilot to ensure that the project works well there? So if we go back to the department chair and just really pin that down, because it doesn't make it clear.
Yeah.
So we'll seek further detail on that, Chair.
Okay. Then at 6.8, there's a response from the department regarding the committee's queries around the evaluation of the High Street voucher scheme at page 28 of table papers. The department intends to commission an external organisation to undertake an independent post-project evaluation of the voucher scheme. This will be undertaken in accordance with the Department of Finance guidance on evaluations, and will have the broad intention of determining whether the scheme was successfully implemented, achieved its original objectives, and provided an economic stimulus for the local economy. The department will also provide analysis on a wide range of metrics, including where people use their cards, including a breakdown by the number of transactions and the amount spent by standard industrial classification code and council area. Departmental statisticians are currently in the process of verifying the data, and once this process has completed, it will form part of an official statistics release.
I don't wish to bring the wrath of the minister down on my head again, says he jokingly. But I see quite a critical editorial in this morning's Irish News in regards to this scheme, and some information they have in relation to freedom of information requests around the number of quite senior staff who were brought in to try and get the scheme rolled out, which in one sense, it's good that was done, but also then you lose opportunity costs in the sense of what those officials be doing otherwise. I suspect, regardless of who's on this committee or who's in the Assembly next time round, this story isn't going to go away.
Chair, I think I'm right in saying that obviously the Audit Office has started looking at a lot of COVID relief schemes. I would have assumed with the level of spend on this one, that's going to be very much on their agenda. It's also occurred to me when I thought it through, the sheer ocean of data that will have been generated, because when you think of it, if there were roughly 1.4 million cards that were used, they're unlikely to be single transactions, so you're talking at least 1.4 million transactions. And I suppose when you look at trying to make that into usable data, that is going to take some time. But in terms of the issues that have been raised around the number of staff that had to be brought in mid-flow, if you like, then yeah, there's a lot of issues around that. We're continuing to hope that there is useful and manageable data coming out before dissolution. But it does occur to me that the level of data is fairly extraordinary, and it will take a lot of work to make that into something useful and manageable. Having said that, the department was posting updates during when the cards have been rolled out on amount of spend in council areas and so on. So we haven't really had a completed, at least high-level set of details like that. So, Chair, if members are content, we'll ask again for at least what high-level information we can be given. I think we'd started to request very specific information that I think the statisticians haven't quite developed yet, but even that high-level information around level of spend in each of the council areas would be useful.
Just given the details in this morning's editorial, it may explain why the department wasn't able to roll out other schemes in terms of the money that was returned from the Economic Recovery Action Plan, around £40 million. It's clear the department was under pressure to get the scheme out, which, as I said earlier on, opportunity costs may have been lost, but it does require to be looked at in further detail moving forward.
We pursue that.
Okay.
Chair, if you want to go to number 8, I think we've just about it.
Yeah, so item number 8 then is the SL1, the Public Interest Disclosure Prescribed Persons Amendment Order NI 2022. There's a clerk's memo at page 490, and then the SL1 itself is at page 492. This statutory rule amends the Public Interest Disclosure Prescribed Persons Order NI 1999 by replacing the schedule to that order. It adds to the list of prescribed persons and amends the name and description of matters to the North Departments and the Secretary of State for Business, Innovation and Skills. It removes the Treasury and Ofqual from the list of prescribed persons. Responsibility for the prescribed persons' functions of Ofqual in the North have now been taken over by SIA. And finally, the order revokes the Public Interest Disclosure Prescribed Persons Amendment Order NI 2014 SR 2014 number 48. So the full list of changes can be found in the clerk's memo. The rule is subject to negative resolution procedure, and the date that the rule comes into operation is 21 days after it is made. So this is the committee's opportunity to consider the policy laid out in the SL1, as it's not possible to amend once the rule has been made and laid in the Assembly Business Office. So are members content with the policy direction as outlined?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so you want to do...
If we only leave it and allow time for members to get to their places.
Deputy Speaker will take the chair in 5 minutes.
So, Chair,
Deputy Speaker will take the chair in 5 minutes.
if we suspend till 11:30, thank you.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber.
Okay, members, so we're going to move through to agenda item number 9 and then into our correspondence before going back to our briefing. So item number 9 is the Provisional Late Payments Commercial Transactions Common Framework Research and Information Service briefing paper. So the briefing paper is at page 495 and that is for members to note at this stage. Are we scheduling a briefing on that one?
So, Chair, we were going to, but now we've kind of slightly pushed out of time with it. A lot of the paper is similar to what we heard in the briefing last week. A lot of the issues raised are the same. So if members are content, we can go through the raised paper, which very helpfully has a lot of scrutiny points, and we can refer those to the department in the meantime. When we get back those answers, it'll give members more of an idea of whether or not they're supportive of the framework. So if members are content, that's the approach we'll take.
Okay.
Thank you.
So item number 10 then is correspondence. 10.1, the response from the Department for Communities to the Communities Committee at page 522 regarding energy price rises. So that is for members to note. Then at 10.2, there is a letter from the ERA Committee to the Department for Economy at page 531 regarding the prospect of extension of COVID-19 support schemes. So that's for members to note also. Then 10.3, there is correspondence from the Committee for Health to the Department at page 533 regarding the Disabled Student Allowance Scheme. And again, it's for members to note, but we will get copies of the responses back.
Will do, Chair, yes.
Correspondence then 10.4 from the Chairperson's Liaison Group at page 537 regarding the report on strengthening committee scrutiny. The report has 33 recommendations and they cover a lot of issues. The CLG obviously is a group that brings together the chairpersons in common interest across committees. It offers a collective approach. It does not sit above committees that are represented on it. So if members are content that we would respond to the CLG, thanking its members for their work, noting the recommendations made in the report and indicating the committee will consider the application of those as members see relevant and appropriate to the committee's function.
Chair.
Okay. 10.5 then, the Examiner of Statutory Rules 13th report of the 2021-22 session. That's at page 713 and is for members to note. And then 10.6 and 10.11 are correspondence from an individual regarding queries about fibre broadband. So those are for members to note.
Chair, Mr. Buchanan.
Just on those queries, Chair, they've been passed to the,
Will they be passed
department.
on?
They were also copied to the department,
sorry,
but we
they're
can
copied
send
for
them
now.
on formally if
So
you
they'll
like.
respond accordingly.
Yeah.
Will we see a copy of the response?
Yeah, we should do. We request that.
Right, 10.7 then, there is correspondence from the Finance Committee to the Economy Minister at page 30 of table papers regarding the COVID support for the hospitality supply chain, which is an issue we've raised ourselves as well. So that's for members to note, and similarly we'll get the responses. Then 10.8, there is a response from the Department to the Committee for Finance at page 32 of table papers regarding the closure of the RHI scheme. Again, that's for members to note. 10.9 then, the Examiner of Statutory Rules 14th report of the session of 2021-22, page 33 of table papers. And then 10.10, correspondence from an individual at page 40 of table papers regarding help for the hair and beauty sector. I guess this is another one of the sectors that has been badly impacted by restrictions, and I know I've certainly been contacted by businesses in the sector highlighting the level of restrictions that were on them and the adherence to health and safety measures still, and how that's impacting, and the requirement to have appointment only still impacts on their business, and obviously asking for support from the Department for the Economy. So if members are content that we would pass on to the department and urge them to pick up on those concerns. Okay, so 10.12 then, there's correspondence from an individual at page 44 of table papers regarding concerns on EU surcharges on items purchased from the UK. So if members are content, we'll pass that correspondence on to the department for its consideration.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Peter, that's correspondence dealt with.
And we are still waiting for witnesses.
Okay.
If you want to go back we can pause for another 5 minutes until we get those witnesses.
Okay, so
So if we suspend again.
we'll just suspend if members are happy.
Thank you.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound.
Okay, so we are live again, and I'd like to move now to item number 4, which is the Employment 0 Hours Workers and Banded Weekly Working Hours Bill, and our briefing from the Women's Policy Group. There's a clerk's memo, page 15 of our packs. There's a written submission from the Women's Policy Group at page 17. Then there is the Women's Policy Group Feminist Recovery Plan Bespoke Report for DFE at page 35. The COVID-19 Feminist Recovery Plan relaunched 1 year on at page 98, and the COVID-19 Feminist Recovery Plan briefing on women's workers' rights at page 431. There is also the Hansard from the briefing with Hospitality Ulster and Retail NI on the 2nd of February at page 453, and the oral witness evidence and committee deliberations of the bill at page 7 of table papers. So I'd like to welcome to this morning's meeting Claire Moore, who is from the Women's Policy Group, Alexa Moore, Alex Brennan and Kiva McNeil, who are all also from the Women's Policy Group. I'm going to hand over to yourselves to do introductions and to make an opening statement, and then we will invite members in for questions, if that's okay with you.
That sounds great, Chair. Thanks very much. Thanks to you and to the members for inviting us to give evidence on behalf of the Women's Policy Group. My name is Claire Moore and I sit on the Women's Policy Group as a representative of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions. Just a quick bit of background, the Women's Policy Group in Northern Ireland is a platform for women working in policy and advocacy roles to share our work and speak with a collective voice on key issues. And it's made up really of a wide range of sectors, organisations and individuals, including trade unions, grassroots women's organisations, women's network, feminist campaigning organisations, NGOs, LGBT plus organisations, as well as human rights and equality organisations and individuals. And over the years, our very important network has ensured that there has been good communication between politicians, policymakers and women's organisations on the ground. So I'm going to make a very brief few introductory comments, and then I'm going to hand over to Alexa, Alex and Kiva, who are all members of the Women's Policy Group as well. So we welcome this bill, which, although not an outright ban, nevertheless provides much needed protection to vulnerable workers, many of whom are women and are subject to poor employment practices from unscrupulous employers. By providing a mechanism to move to banded hours, which provide guaranteed minimum hours, we believe this will give more certainty and financial security to many workers on these contracts. And although we know that reliable data in relation to zero-hour contracts in Northern Ireland is somewhat limited, we do know that these contracts are used across a wide range of sectors, including hospitality and agri-food, and zero-hour contracts are also common in the social care sector in which women predominate. These type of contracts give little flexibility for workers themselves and uphold unequal power dynamics between the employer and the employee, as acknowledged by the Taylor Review. Women obviously already face vast levels of discrimination in the workplace, particularly in relation to pregnancy and maternity discrimination, as well as sexual harassment. This vulnerability is very much amplified for women who are on zero-hour contracts, and they face the real threat that if they complain about harassment and discrimination, that they will not receive any more work from their employer. I know you heard evidence from my colleagues in the Irish Congress of Trade Unions last week about the exploitation of vulnerable workers at hands of rogue employers. And the Peace Funded project, which Kevin Doherty talked about at the evidence session, which was a partnership between Congress and a range of other organisations, has also gathered extremely worrying evidence of the abuse of women who, when they become pregnant, have found that their hours suddenly decrease dramatically, and who are absolutely terrified that if they challenge this, that they will face the very real threat of having no work once their baby has been born. Moving to banded hours would give women like this some degree of certainty. So this bill represents an important step forward which will protect workers, yet retain a degree of flexibility for good employers. And as has been mentioned by other organisations in previous evidence, the Women's Policy Group does have some concern in relation to clause 14 of the bill and other aspects, and this will be highlighted by Alexa. However, as you're also all too aware, only a very small percentage of the Northern Ireland workforce are on zero-hour contracts, and much more needs to be done to tackle low-paid, low-hour and precarious work. The Women's Policy Group therefore supports the full implementation of the clause on workers' rights contained within New Decade New Approach, which, together with the rights contained within this bill, we believe has potential to offer additional protections for workers, particularly women. We would also commend the Feminist Recovery Plan, which the Chair has already mentioned, which was produced by the Women's Policy Group in 2020 and again updated in 2021, and which contains many recommendations to address inequalities faced by women in work and in society. I'm going to hand over now to the rest of the delegation who will elaborate on these issues, and I think Alexa is going to go first.
Yes. Thank you, Claire, for the fabulous introduction. And I would also like to thank the chairs, the clerk and the entire committee for having us in today. My name is Alexa Moore and I'm a human rights activist, as well as being a member of the Women's Policy Group. So, as Claire mentioned, we do welcome this bill and we believe that it will help address the lack of security and economic precarity experienced by many workers on zero-hour contracts. And we see the bill as an important first step in this process, while also recognising that it isn't an outright ban. This move is particularly important for the Women's Policy Group, as we know that women are more likely than men to be in temporary, part-time and/or precarious working arrangements, as well as more likely to report that they are underemployed. While acknowledging that only 1.4% of people in Northern Ireland are on a zero-hours contract, the provisions in this bill will hopefully benefit women who are engaged in these contracts or who are engaged in sectors where they are prevalently used. I'm going to focus on some of the specific provisions of the bill we think will benefit workers and where we believe some clarification or changes may be required. Firstly, enabling the move to banded hours is an important provision which should create more security and provide workers with a minimum expectation of work on a weekly basis, moving away from the inherent precarity of zero-hour contracts. I would like to kind of also specifically recognise that it's encouraging to see a provision in Article 112L of the bill enabling workers to request a higher band placement if they have been working a higher number of hours than their contract, which should hopefully enable those on lower banded hours to have an easier route out of underemployment and in-work poverty. The Women's Policy Group would also like to specifically recognise the positive impact of placing the onus on the employer to offer these banded contracts to workers who are entitled to them. Many workers are unaware of their rights and many employers are quite frankly remiss to inform them and uphold them. However, making this a legal requirement for employers will hopefully ensure that more workers are able to take up more secure working contracts. Now, as Claire alluded to, the bill isn't perfect, and we do have a specific concern with Clause 14 of the bill, dictating that a move to banded hours means that a worker ceases to be classed as a zero-hours worker. While this isn't problematic in and of itself, when combined with the loss of new rights being afforded to zero-hours workers through this bill, this could possibly place those on lower bands at a kind of more disadvantaged position where they're unable to look for more work. For instance, Clause 3 of the bill making exclusivity terms on zero-hours workers unenforceable. This is a move which enables those who are on very low incomes or very low contracts to seek more work and improve their standard of living. And it's a massive step forward for the rights of workers on zero-hour contracts. However, the concern comes in where this protection from exclusivity clauses does not seem to transfer over to workers on these new banded contracts, which would be especially important for those on lower bands to be able to seek more work. I'm also slightly concerned that zero-hours workers may be unaware of these new rights if or when this bill comes into effect. And I believe that strategies should be developed to ensure that zero-hours workers are aware of the unenforceability of any exclusivity clauses that they had previously been under. I would also urge the consideration of further remedies for inclusion in Clause 13, possibly including powers similar to those upholding the national minimum wage, where employers who do not comply with the legislation may be fined by HMRC. We know many workers are scared to kick up a fuss or take their employers to a tribunal for fear of retaliation or for fear of declining standards of employment. So any provisions that could be included within this bill which would encourage employers to proactively comply with these new regulations and the obligations contained therein would absolutely be welcomed by the Women's Policy Group. Further, we believe that while these new rights and this kind of step closer to banning zero-hours contracts should absolutely be welcomed, much more needs to be done to tackle low paid and precarious work and to support workers across Northern Ireland. And I'm going to pass over to Alexandra to discuss that further. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alexa, and Claire as well for the introduction. And thank you, Chairs, Clerk and Committee for engaging with us. I'm Alexandra Brennan, and I'm the coordinator of the Northern Ireland Women's Budget Group, and I'm also a member of the Women's Policy Group. So as previously mentioned by my colleagues, we welcome the bill as an important step towards strengthening the rights of workers. However, we would like to emphasise that this is merely a step in addressing precarity and low pay in the labour market. The existence of other types of precarious work and the issues associated with such work will continue to detract from the employers providing quality jobs in the labour market. This is evident through the issue of low pay. While the percentage of workers with hourly earnings less than the minimum wage has decreased since the consultation on this bill concluded in 2019, it was 25.1% in 2019, and the last recording of it in 2021 was 21.3%. This is still the highest percentage of workers living below the living wage in any region or country in the UK. This perpetuates poverty and precarious work environments, which disproportionately impacts on women. A significant number of women in Northern Ireland are employed in work that is part-time and considered precarious. Specifically, 40% of women compared to 12% of men are in part-time work. In January 2021, the UK Women's Budget Group released data that showed women on the lowest incomes are 8 times more at risk of losing their jobs, and that women working part-time are more likely to report that they would have to take time off work with no pay when the schools were closing due to the pandemic. This instability is exacerbated by the lack of affordable and accessible childcare, as it forces mainly part-time working women out of work. We know that 4/5 of women aged 35 to 49 with dependent children in Northern Ireland are more likely to work part-time, and childcare is a direct barrier to women's equal and full participation in the labour market. As well, half of all women have been a carer at some point by the age of 46, which is 11 years earlier than men. And this could not only cause a reduction in hours, but also time off, which could impact chances at upward mobility within a workplace. And it's notable that women over 40 are less than likely to move into higher paying managerial roles. Barriers to women's full participation in the labour market also contribute to inequality in pay. In the NARI report, How Unequal the Unadjusted Gender Pay Gap in Earnings in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, author Lisa Wilson noted that due to the high number of women in part-time work and the high number of men in full-time work, a comparison that should be considered when looking at the gender pay gap is the hourly earnings of women in part-time work and the hourly earnings of men in full-time work. And when looking at their median hourly earnings, it was a 26.3% gap in favour of men. Married women make 75p less per hour than married men, which suggests a marriage premium for men and a marriage penalty for women. And the gender pay gap also favours men with children over women with children, what we would call the motherhood penalty. And these impacts on equal pay paired with rising costs of childcare are what drive women out of the labour force. So this isn't a choice, but rather a weighted decision that sees men more likely to stay in work because of higher salaries afforded through these premiums. And 35.4% of women in Northern Ireland cited looking after the family and home as the reason for their inactive situation. And this was the highest in the UK. And while these women are considered economically inactive, the unpaid work that they have left the labour market for is crucial to the economy. In 2015, unpaid carers in Northern Ireland saved the government £4.6 billion, or the cost of a second NHS. And this legislation around zero-hour contracts will help with precarity in the labour market to an extent, but to fully address these issues, we need affordable and accessible childcare, a women's employment strategy, strengthened legislation to address the gender pay gap, and to deliver the other commitments made around the rights of workers in the New Decade New Approach Agreement. Thank you again for your time, and I'd now like to bring in my colleague Kiva, who will touch upon wider workplace reforms.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to the Chair, the Clerk and the Committee for having us here today. My name is Kiva McNeil and I sit on the Women's Policy Group as a representative of Unison. The last 2 years have really demonstrated how those in the most precarious of employment contracts are those who society has relied upon the most during the pandemic. 19.7% of people employed on a zero-hour contract are in the health and social care sector, 11.3% are in the wholesale and retail sector, while 22.6% are employed in the accommodation and food industry, a sector which has been particularly impacted by the pandemic. These figures directly impact women, who are more likely to be involved in these sectors, particularly in retail, health and social care, and the service sector. Throughout the pandemic, these sectors have been the bedrock of our society. I don't think anybody could question that. Care workers on zero-hour contracts put their lives on the line every day to help care for us and for our families and protect each and every one of us. Staff in the education sector, childcare workers and youth workers on zero-hour contracts kept our schools, our childcare facilities and our youth centres open so that our key workers could continue working throughout the pandemic. And charities and community organisations provided lifelines in many shapes and forms to the most vulnerable in our society. The prevalence of zero-hour contracts in these sectors creates significant issues for recruitment and retention, which then in turn has a negative impact on workforce planning, and continuity of service delivery. It's important not only to learn from the pandemic, but from other countries in which similar legislation has proved to be successful. Currently, the UK is one of the few places in Europe where zero-hour contracts are both permitted and commonly used. The Employment Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2018 prohibits the use of zero-hour contracts, with some exceptions in the Republic of Ireland. This legislation offered a range of protections for employees working in precarious employment, and we welcome the similarities proposed in this bill regarding earnings compensation and banded contracts. Despite concerns prior to the legislation passing in the South, there has been no evidence to indicate that the ban on zero-hour contracts in this legislation has had a negative impact on the economy there as a whole. So given the evidence that Alexa and Alex have presented today, it's clear that more needs to be done beyond this bill to address the issue of zero-hour contracts, low-hour contracts, precarious employment and their impact on women. We need to see an economy that protects women in the workplace, providing adequate and affordable access to childcare, proper reporting on the gender pay gap and protections from poor working conditions in precarious sectors, most typically worked in by women, and jobs that pay a real living wage. So to conclude, while we welcome the introduction of this bill as an important stepping stone in creating protections for workers, I would like to reiterate the call from the Women's Policy Group, as Claire alluded to earlier, for the full implementation of the New Decade New Approach commitments to good jobs, a decent income, security of tenure, satisfying work and decent working conditions. Thank you.
Thank you all for your contributions, and also to put on record the committee's thanks for you to engage with us on this bill, and also for your very important contribution throughout the pandemic and the number of reports that you have produced that have been very comprehensive and insightful, and produced a number of important recommendations across a range of areas. The committee also recognises that this bill is one step as such in terms of addressing precarity in work, and also wants to see taken forward the New Decade New Approach commitments that all parties signed up to in terms of coming back into the executive, in particular in relation to tackling low pay and trade union recognition and collective bargaining rights. Really important that those issues are taken forward, and certainly will be reflected in our legacy report from this mandate. Just, I suppose, I have a couple of questions, and first of all to reflect that the issue around clause 14 has been highlighted to us. It was also highlighted to the bill sponsor by ICTU as well, and I know that she is willing to look at that issue. In relation to further remedies, I think that's something that we will also give some consideration to, potentially an important issue that needs to be taken forward, and it relates to my first question, which is, Claire, you referred to the work that Kevin also referred to last week, and what do you think is required in ensuring that particularly minority ethnic groups who may be more at risk of being exploited in terms of these type of contracts, in terms of awareness raising and ensuring that they know that they can raise issues and seek recourse through tribunals or through other means? What further do you think is required in respect of that? And then my second question is, one of the issues, I guess, that has been raised with the committee around, why zero-hour contracts are not a bad thing, is flexibility. Do you see any negatives in the move to banded hours in terms of flexibility?
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks for the comments that you've noted there, particularly in relation to Clause 14 and the willingness to address that loophole. I think you're right. I think there are, considerable issues which are raised in relation to the protection of vulnerable workers, which the rights which will hopefully be afforded through this bill will not necessarily address. So I think it is important. The evidence that Peace Project collected, in which ICTU participated, was very much saying that the onus should not be on vulnerable workers to take forward cases to the tribunal. Even if those vulnerable workers have the protection of a trade union representing them, it's still extremely difficult for them to do it. They fear retaliation, they fear being penalised, they fear that they won't actually get further contracts, and that obviously places them in a real danger of poverty and all sorts of other issues. So I think the issues which Alexa raised, and I know my colleagues have also raised from the trade union movement, about looking at potential remedies, and I know this was something that was also raised in the Taylor Review, taking the burden, the responsibility away from the vulnerable worker and looking at mechanisms such as those which apply to the enforcement of the national minimum wage. It is something that I think merits further consideration, and that we should definitely do. So I think that's something that could be looked at, Chair, and I know that's been considered by the committee before. But I think it's also important to look at the issue of trade union recognition and collective bargaining, because we know that also protects vulnerable workers from exploitation from rogue employers. Would somebody else from our delegation like to come in on the second point around flexibility?
I'm happy to, Claire, absolutely. I think that excuse me. I think that there is some workers who do choose these kind of 0 hours or lower contracts because of the flexibility that they offer, and I think that is why I specifically called out the kind of inclusion of Article 112L in that it allows workers to request a reconsideration if their hours have increased, or if the average hours that they've been doing over the particular reference period is maybe higher than the banded contract that they were allocated when they first requested to be moved from their 0 hours contract. And I also think that the kind of 3-month qualifying period does kind of mean that, even if a worker is working a lower amount of hours for a kind of short amount of time, there's always going to be another reconsideration period, another kind of qualifying period where they can increase their hours and they can kind of move to a higher banded contract. I think that, again, it isn't perfect. It won't work for some workers, but I think that those two elements of this bill do allow for a little bit of flexibility. And, hopefully when we're considering, more vulnerable or more marginalised communities who or folks who are going through different aspects of their life, pregnancy or kind of having kids and growing the family, where that flexibility may be required, I think that these two kind of aspects of the bill will help in that respect. There's always more that can be done, but in terms of kind of the move from 0 hours contracts, I think that those two definitely keep some of that flexibility there, while also providing a little bit more security for the workers who are actually on the contracts.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for both of those answers. They're very useful to us, and I know we have been told in relation to the broader New Decade, New Approach commitments and a number of other employment issues that have been raised by us and others over the course of the past 2 years, that the Department is looking at a broader employment refresh or update in terms of legislation, and a number of these issues obviously need to be considered as part of that. And I think particularly the issues in relation to taking the burden away from workers in terms of pursuing remedy and ensuring that employers are held to account is something that needs to be considered as part of that. And just also to say, in relation to the broader work that the Women's Policy Group has taking the lead on, I guess, in relation to women and economic recovery, is something that certainly I'd like to suggest that the committee puts into its legacy report to be picked up as early as possible in the next mandate, because I think it is important work and it has an important contribution to make in respect of that. I'm going to move on and let Mike come in.
Chair, thank you, and thank you all for your engagement with us. I would like to broaden it out, if I may, in two ways. First of all, you're making it very clear to me that you think this bill is an important contribution to issues and imbalances, but doesn't cover everything. So, from my point of view, it would be useful to know if there is a sort of rank order of other issues that need to be addressed in the next mandate. You know, for example, would gender budgeting make a big difference? And the other area is the extent to which you feel your voices are being heard, because you provide weighty, detailed analysis such as the feminist recovery plan for COVID, but I don't think it got the attention it deserved at the right levels. And I'm also conscious that you're under huge pressure because of the volume of consultations, which perhaps restricts your ability to give the sort of detailed, knowledgeable responses that you're capable of, but you just don't have the resource and time to do it.
Thanks for that, Mike. I'm going to make a very brief comment, and then I would think Alexandra would want to come in, particularly on the women's budget, gender budgeting issue, which you raise. I'm not sure that we have a rank order necessarily, but certainly we do have a lot of recommendations. And the chair commended the feminist recovery plan, which I think runs to nearly 150 pages. It's a massive piece of work, but it also has summaries for each department. And there is one for the Department of the Economy, which outlines and summarises the recommendations. Obviously we don't have the time today, but certainly I think we do need to be highlighting issues such as childcare, affordable, accessible, flexible childcare, which is so badly needed. We need to tackle issues such as occupational segregation. And we also need to bring forward gender pay gap reporting regulations, which were promised in the 2016 Employment Act. So there are a wide range of things that we need to do to tackle a lot of these issues we discussed. And I think I thank you for raising the issue of getting our voice heard, because I do think that within the Feminist Recovery Plan, there have been reports which have been written for each department, and particular questions and recommendations have been asked of each department. And I think it would be fair to say that we have not necessarily had the engagement that we would have hoped for. And I think that's something that very much needs to be looked at, because this group is bringing forward extremely important evidence and research. And it's important that that's heard and that's addressed.
Yes, Claire, completely agree with you, and thanks for bringing me in there. Mike, again, thank you for bringing up the gender budgeting, because I think you're absolutely right. If we had we could implement tools around gender budgeting, which for those who don't know, gender budgeting is a tool that can help recognize systemic disadvantages and lead to budgets and policies that promote greater gender equality, because it's looking at the gendered impacts of spending and revenue raising decisions and how to use these mechanisms to bring about gender equality. And especially when bringing in or delivering the other commitments from the New Decade New Approach agreement, if gender budgeting was applied through those processes, or as well through a larger sort of employment strategy or women's employment strategy, something along those lines. It would be crucial to have gender budgeting implemented throughout every stage of that process, because as I think we've highlighted today, obviously women's experience in the labour market is entirely different than men's experience in the labour market. So, for these sorts of for this experience to be properly articulated in that sort of legislation, we would need to have a gendered lens applied throughout the policy decision-making process. So yes, gender budgeting, I think, would significantly help not only bring these issues to the table, but to help to legislate on them.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
John.
Chair, the point I was looking to raise has actually been covered by yourself in terms of how we enforce legislation, and I note the answer. I was just looking there at the Equal Pay Act of 1970, and then looking at your comments in relation to women earn on average around 9.6% less than men. So having legislation in place is one thing, but making sure it's enforced is the most important thing. But I already note your answer. Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the information. And I appreciate, I suppose, one of the key messages is that while zero hours contracts as a subject is an important subject in and of itself, it's if you like, one component of a wider picture. I just want to probe probably two, maybe make one comment and then probe just two areas. Specifically, obviously, with regards clause 14, I suppose it would be a comment across the committee that no one would want to see any sort of inadvertent loopholes appear which were not intended. And I think that if we were in a situation where we reach a point at which legislation, I suspect, just to be fair in relation to this, it's maybe right that we don't create a misleading impression that given circumstances of time frame with the mandate due to end in just over a month's time, this particular bill won't directly make the statute books, but it may well be a conduit to what will come then in the near future. But what I was going to say was, I think from the point of view of what's there in clause 14, obviously I think there would be a common view that we don't want to create a situation where by creating some rights we then inadvertently take others away. And I suppose one of the things that we're trying to explore then is, given there is probably a level of ambiguity, if I can put it that way, over 14, whether the concerns that have been raised are ones that are borne out by what is there in legislation, or whether therefore it requires, from a drafting point of view, a degree of changes just to make sure that, for example, the ban on exclusivity that I think everyone would be very much in favour of banning, that it doesn't, if you like, accidentally fall out then for some workers. That's maybe just the comment. Two questions I want to ask. The first one, just again, just in terms of the and there may not be an easy way around this because there would have to be some level of qualification period. But I'll maybe ask you a question which I maybe ask also to ICTU, which is, are there any concerns that with the qualification period of 3 months that we reach a point at which inadvertently that could advantage employers who are less responsible, i.e. that if there's a knowledge that to qualify for banded contracts somebody has to be there for a continuous period of 3 months, for employers who are almost keen to avoid this and are happy not to give the workers rights, that they have a constant sort of short-term churn of people employing them for 2.5 months, and then effectively, well, actually, we're going to pull the plug on that for a while, just to make sure that they don't qualify. Is there any levels of concern that you would have over people trying to exploit that as a potential route, which would then mean that, to some extent, irresponsible employers would be put in a more advantageous position than more responsible employers?
I do think you raise a good point on this, and I mean, again, I suppose what we're saying is that the provisions within this bill not going to solve every problem, and they're maybe not going to solve every problem from rogue employers exploiting workers in the way that you've said. But I guess that, you know, it's not a panacea, but it's a stepping stone. And I think certainly where possible, this is something that we'll be watching very closely. And I mean, it also requires, the chair has also said that, you know, there is a commitment to look at other employment rights, which we've fallen behind on in Northern Ireland. And I think that doing that in tandem with hopefully looking at enacting this bill will be very important. But I'm not sure if other members of our delegation want to come in on that as well. That's just a very quick reflection.
I'm happy to on this. Yeah, I mean, you know, when we were chatting through this, we did consider the 3-month qualifying period as potentially kind of causing some issues of that churn. I don't think that there is a perfect solution to this, and I think that, you know, as Claire has said, this is a really important first step. It is by no means a panacea. It is by no means something that will solve all of our problems. And I think that the issue here is one of kind of the culture of employers. And the culture of how employment is managed in Northern Ireland, across the UK, in terms of, you know, the value of workers and the value of kind of going out and essentially going through that churn and trying to recruit more and so on and so forth. I think that if we make it so that the value proposition of kind of firing your workers after 2 or 3 months is less valuable than keeping them on and supporting them and growing them within the organisation or the business, whatever kind of business it is, then we can get to a point where that kind of exploitation and that kind of unscrupulous employment isn't an issue. I don't think that will be solved in this bill. I think that, you know, this is a really good first step, and this is something that we do need to think about kind of in the future. But the 3-month qualifying period, while it has its issues, is still on the whole, I think, a good thing.
No, I mean, I think, look, I agree in terms of the, I suppose I suspect there's no route round other than to have some form of trigger point in relation to that, but also, I suppose it comes back to the old phrase, it can't be the exact way it's phrased, about the danger of making the perfect the enemy of the good in that regard, that, you know, that by striking to do something which I think, I suppose just the second point I would want to raise, and maybe just to slightly look at the flip side of the coin, which is you've very clearly highlighted the within zero-hours contract, and particularly because of specifically within some of the sectors where it most readily applies, although I suppose one of the advantages, at least in Northern Ireland, we have a much smaller percentage of the workforce that are on zero-hours contract than elsewhere, is the particular sectors will have, that it is more prevalent in, will have a disproportionate number of female workers compared to other sectors. And also you've highlighted, I suppose, as a result of that and other issues, that in and of itself can create a particular level of vulnerability for female workers, that, you know, there is a danger then that if they are seen to be complaining, that there are routes to which employers can then use to exploit. But I wonder, obviously, you've highlighted quite a bit in terms of the impact on female employees, and maybe it's outside the remit of your group, but in terms of the Women's Policy Group, have you had any particular engagement then with female employers, and to see whether there's any particular views or specific aspects or anything, particularly from a gender point of view, that would be specific to female employers in terms of the issue?
I'll come in on that, and I think again you've raised a very good point. The Women's Policy Group is I mean, some of the representatives who sit on it are also employers, obviously. So that's something I think you know is important to consider. In relation to engagement, I suppose, with the wider kind of employer representative organisations. We would have links, for example, with Women in Business, but also business in the community. But I think you're right, it would be important to reach out and engage maybe in a more structured way with those organisations, and that would be welcome for us as well.
I mean, I suppose, and this may be more for the committee, and I don't know whether there has been direct contact with it, but obviously, given that, I think, to be fair summary, that in terms of your position is largely speaking reflecting the impact on female employees, and from a worker's point of view on that basis on it, I don't know whether maybe there is some opportunity, at least even to get, and it may be that the organisations may or may not want to contribute directly to this, but it may be from a committee point of view, maybe we seek to see if there's any particular aspects or views from representative bodies that would particularly look after female employers type of thing, to see if there's a other side to the coin, and which it may be that there isn't sort of in connection with that. But I suppose that's again just more of a point, more for the committee really than yourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Peter. Keith?
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks everyone for your information. A lot of stuff's covered already. I just have one question. We had retail NI and hospitality sector, and I think it was last week or the week previous, and not quoting them, but they sort of more or less indicated there wasn't a major issue in their sectors. What's your, I don't want you to answer, I suppose, their thoughts, but have you any experience in their sectors, and is there an issue?
I'll jump in, and other members may want to come in after me. Thanks for the question. I mean, I suppose I didn't see the evidence given by Retail NI, and I think I alluded to the fact when I made my opening remarks that the kind of the drilling down into the data on zero-hour contracts in Northern Ireland, I think hasn't been done to the extent that it's been done UK-wide, because I suppose you're looking at such a small sample of workers. So, I mean, I can't provide the kind of the percentages of that kind of between 1.4 and 2% of workers who are on zero-hour contracts who are in particular sectors. I suppose we can only speak from the experience that we have, both as a women's policy group, but also as individual organisations. And I know, you know, some of the retail sector, there has been a move to kind of, at least maybe informally, to look at the idea of banded hours. So maybe that's something that, you know, the retail sector and industries have got together on, and I think that's a good thing. And hopefully the legislation that will be enacted with this within this bill will assist with that. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, but you know, it's something that we are aware of, and of course we have links to those groups and organisations ourselves.
If I could come in here just briefly, I think that, you know, the reality of it is that because of such a small number of workers are on zero hours contracts, I would say if you asked any industry, any industry body, kind of what the impact of zero hours contracts is in their industry, it would probably be very low. That doesn't negate the suffering and the insecurity and the precarity experienced by the small number of workers on zero hours contracts. It just means that they're not kind of more widespread. Where we do see them most predominantly used is in places like kind of hospitality, is in social care, is in places where a lot of agency work is done. And we know that, you know, there are a lot of women in those roles as well. And so that's why it's an issue for us. You know, I've worked in LGBT communities and trans communities for a long time. I don't like to focus on, you know, how many of them are, or what the kind of percentage is, because I think that every person who is experiencing hardship or experiencing difficulties in their place of employment should be supported. And so no matter how small this issue is, I'm glad that it's being dealt with. And you know, I hope that for workers in retail, in hospitality, in social care and in other places where these contracts are used, that this will be a positive step forward for their employment and for their security.
And if I can actually just come in there as well, completely agree with what Claire and Alexa have said. And I think it's also important to note that while, like Alexa said, because there's such a small percentage of workers in Northern Ireland that are on 0-hour contracts, it may seem in every sector like it's not really prevalent. But I think it's important to note as well that in those sectors, there are a high percentage of women who take up those working roles. And even if they're not on 0-hour contracts, I think back to what I provided evidence on, they may be still in precarious or part-time or low-paid work, which we would advocate again as the 0-hour contract legislation would be a significant stepping stone in dealing with that precarity in workplace environments. But there still will be barriers or precarious situations for women in those sectors that needs to be dealt with in the future.
And I'll just finish up on this question as well, just to highlight the statistics again. So there is 11.3% of those on 0-hour contracts employed in the wholesale and retail sector. And while, yes, 11.3 of 12,000 people is not a huge number of employees, it still is the third highest sector in Northern Ireland with employees on 0-hour contracts. So as my colleagues have said, it might not be a massive issue for the sector, but it is a massive issue for those workers. And while they may, particularly in retail, you know, still have quite a significant number of hours, regardless of their 0-hour contract status, it still provides a level of insecurity and instability and financial insecurity that causes an inordinate amount of stress for workers. So obviously, you know, we would welcome any changes that could help protect even the smallest number of workers in that sector.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Keith. I don't have any other members indicating to come in at this point. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us and for the evidence that you have shared with us. In relation to the point that Mike raised about how departments have taken up the recommendations from the Feminist Recovery Plan, I'm going to ask for the committee to agree that we would write to other committees asking that they write to their departments about the recommendations for the various departments, and obviously we would seek to do that to the Department for Economy. So if members are happy to do that, and look, thanks again for taking the time to talk to us, and it has been really useful to us. And in relation to the specific issues highlighted in relation to clause 14 and further remedy, that's something that the committee will take further consideration of. So thank you. Okay, Peter, so do we have anything else to pick up on coming out of that?
Just that I've got bits and pieces I've noted that we'll follow up on. Largely the sort of issues that were being raised are similar to the ones that we heard from Nick Ictu last week. There's a few more nuanced issues around some of the other clauses. We're now in a position where time has largely sort of started to run out in this, so we're now in a position of seeking to draft a report. So in those cases, we'll be highlighting the issues within those clauses as we know the bill will progress further, and it'll be really then looking for those issues to be remedied in any new piece of legislation coming forward, either from an individual member of committee or from the department as part of a bigger employment rights bill. But I think it's important that those issues are highlighted. As witnesses indicated, and as members have said, the bill isn't perfect, but it's a very good first step forward that can be supported then by subsequent legislation. So we'll highlight all that in the bill report.
Chair, could I check out, because it was the point I'd raised because I think it's important that we get the fullest perspective on all these issues on it, but obviously specifically, because obviously the Women's Policy Group was very principally representing, and I think very good points, representing, largely speaking, the views of female employees. Yeah. But in terms of whether there is any particular additional perspective, any different perspective from female employers' side of things, whether we have reached out to the likes of women in business, and as I said, it may be that they may or may not want to make any level of submission in relation to that, but just maybe to clarify that, and if we haven't, I think maybe it's useful to get that any information from them at least?
What we would do, Chair, is as part of our recommendations, that's further work that needs to be done. If we had had more time and this was continuing, you always build in a fair bit of time for, I suppose, referrals, if you like, and that would fall into that category where when talking to one group you find out there's more groups that you need to talk to. So what we'll do is those will be all listed in the recommendations going forward. The recommendations from this and other bill reports that don't complete will go through into our legacy report as well. So they'll be there, sort of, if you like, packaged for a new committee to pick them up. But because we'll publish a bill report, even though the committee will reserve its position, it means that that's out there, and those groups know that there will be someone coming to ask for their opinions. I'm pretty sure in saying we didn't approach women in business directly. Obviously, we had our survey, and again, our turnaround time, and that was very, very short. But we can put all that in the bill report and highlight that in our legacy report.
Fair enough.
So I don't think we did agenda set item number 7, but it is, we did discuss it. So it's just the onshore fracking bill. We already discussed it, I think, at the start of the committee.
Yes.
So
I think we covered that one, Chair.
Dealt with. So moving then to item number 11, which is any other business, and I just wanted to raise the issues, obviously, that have been highlighted to us about Invest NI not being able to provide any funding beyond the end of the financial year, or any new funding beyond the end of the financial year. And Peter, can we ask for them to come and talk to us about that? Matthew and then John.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chair. I mean, I just want to, I suppose, second the request and underline it with a degree of urgency. I think the evidence is now fairly incontrovertible that there is, I mean, I used the word crisis yesterday. I don't think that's too strong a word to describe what's happening at Invest NI, particularly with reports other members have had around turnover of staff. We know the senior leadership, there's been turnover there, but also at important offices, including in London. Now the Invest NI is unable to write any new business, and I don't think the Minister disputed that yesterday. What he was saying was that on supports that are already in tree and are going to continue, but that's different from making new grants and allocations to. So I think this is a very, very serious thing that we should. I mean, I think it's important that we take evidence on these bills and have that handed over to the future. But I would say, I suppose, this is urgent, and this is something we can do that will be, that's urgent right now.
John?
It's on a separate issue, so maybe somebody else wants to come in.
Is anybody else coming in on this? No, on this?
No.
Chair.
Oh, sorry.
On it, we've discussed that personnel piece. It's also been put to me that perhaps an unexpected burden was put on Invest to help deliver the High Street voucher scheme.
Chair, there was reports in the media about the number of staff, I think, in Invest that were diverted into that sort of midstream, and the potential impact there was. So again, that's an issue that they can address. I suppose it should be also, members need to consider the issues they look at and not cutting across Sir Michael Lyons' review, but these are operational issues that have been raised and are obviously part of the budgeting issue that the committee needs to report on, and are very much live and really are things that need to be addressed. So,
I mean, I would just say, if I may, Chair, really briefly, I think in terms of the urgency of it, I mean, Michael Lyons is doing a big, along with two people, Rotha Johnson and Maureen O'Reilly, who've been appointed. That's good, but I don't think he's going in to do a kind of urgent report on some of these issues. These are very live issues, they're real public concern, and they're not just kind of, there's not kind of party political at all. I mean, I think there's another question about, for example, in relation to people being moved over. My understanding is that Invest NI is an NDPB. I'd like to understand the basis on which staff are seconded to work on a central departmental project. Now, I'm not saying anything illegitimate has happened, but there's a legitimate question there to be answered about about the contractual basis on which that's happened, and whether there's been, for example, payment to Invest.
John?
The ongoing industrial dispute at Queen's and Ulster University, we don't get involved in these matters directly, but would it be possible for the committee to ask both universities for an update on what progress is being made to attempt to resolve those issues? I know one of them is pensions, and it's a broader outside the control, but there's also concerns about the casualisation of staff as well, which I would like some feedback on, if possible.
Yeah, and I understand there was some escalation of the issue around the pensions yesterday evening, so it would be useful to get the local university's perspective on that as well, because it's very concerning.
Sure, we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay, so I don't have anybody else indicating. Moving on then to item number 12, which is the date, time and place of our next meeting, and it's Wednesday the 2nd of March, and we're back in room 30. So thanks everybody.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly